Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Talking Insights, the podcast that explores the trends, challenges, and big ideas shaping the world of market research and insights. I'm your host, Antonio, and if you've been tuning in lately, you know that we've been on a bit of a synthetic data journey. And honestly, I've learned something new in every single episode. The different perspectives, the different ways of thinking are very important for us to understand this new technology. And when I think that I'm starting to wrap my head around it, then just someone or something comes along and it just like flips the script. So today we're doing just that. We have Cynthia Vega. She's the head of digital analytics at Kantar and the co-author of the latest report, Synthetic Data Beyond the Hype. So I hope you learned something new. I hope it pokes your curiosity. And now without further ado, here's Cynthia. All right, Cynthia, thank you so much for being here. I want to start by asking, like, for people that are hearing synthetic data for the first time, or for the ones that keep hearing about this term but just want a refresher, can you just give me like a quick definition of what it is in this context of market research and analytics, and how to understand like this power, limitations? Tell me everything.
Yeah, and I think thank you very much for the invitation. I love talking about this hot topic today. And when we talk about synthetic data, we tend to use the definition that you can find in the Oxford Dictionary. And that definition says synthetic data is data that has been generated through a statistical or computational model using a real data set. Now, why do I like that definition? Why do we use that definition? Because it talks about data and because it talks about a real human data set. There's a lot of peers in the industry that talk about creating new people, new humans. And that isn't strictly true. What all synthetic methodologies have in common is that they don't create new humans. They create or infer data outcomes that simulate or that mirror the behaviors of real people. And this is really important because at no point we have new people. It's data. This is always data. The other element that is really important for me is the real data set. Now we have established that is data generating data. And therefore, if you put good quality human inputs, you will get good quality inferences that are based on human behavior. You need to know the source. You need to know that it's human if you are trying to mirror behaviors of humans. So that for me is a definition that I find quite useful, and we're going with the theme of data, generating data. Hope that helped for you, Antonio.
No, I think so. Yeah, I think it's always a good refresher. You wrote with your coworkers, but like a fantastic report called The Synthetic Data Beyond the Hype.
Yeah.
I was reading it. It's always a good refresher to like keep understanding these things, because at least for me, like we've been talking about for a few months now about it, and what it means and what it goes and everything else. But it's always a good refresher to keep and having different perspectives on it. And I want to ask, what are some of the biggest misconceptions that especially brands and researchers still have on synthetic data?
Yeah, and that is a great question. And I think, what you were saying now as well, it happens with any new technology, right? Where there's all this debate and these myths and how does it work and misconceptions. So it's always great to go beyond the hype and just ground ourselves back on what is the need, why are you using it, and just remove a bit of the fluff around to really understand the implications for our business. Ask the right questions. For me, it's about asking the right questions to learn. Some of the biggest misconceptions that I've heard is, the myth number one for me is synthetic data does not need human data for training. And again, I mentioned this is data generating data. You need good quality inputs. And so I believe that to be fit for decision making, these modeling exercises needs to reflect real world complexities. And that means not only learning from the past, from the data that someone wrote, there's some companies using just ChatGPT and so on, but you need also fresh data. What do I mean by fresh? What happened yesterday that impacted my brand and that is having an impact on the brand today? What happened the month before is that likely to show me how the behavior is going to be in the past. So it's learning from the past, but also learning from the from today. So you get that fresh element of data. And this is going to help ensure that the findings that you have, that the understanding of the brand is relevant and is current. So I believe synthetic data does need human data for training today. Things may evolve, things are changing really fast, but today I feel we need it, and you can read as well, to those of you listening, there's a lot of reports as well from the EU Commission where they talk about best use of data and Gen AI and synthetic in general. So we're not the only ones attesting to this.
And that's interesting that you're mentioning the EU, because I feel like there's also some regulation and that should come in place, right, for all of this.
Yeah, and I think, at the moment, a lot of it as well is guidance, because I think what happens with any new technology is sometimes it's a bit like the Wild West, right? There may be regulation, it'll take time to be applied, especially in the context of digital. So it is more about common sense, I would say. And again, we're using this data to make decisions. So we need to remember that it may be the Wild West, but what do we want for our brand? What do we want for our business? And this is where, for me, it's not about being cautious, but again, it's about asking the right questions so you know what you're using, what you're getting into. The other myth that I've been hearing from clients is that synthetic data can answer any question autonomously. So give it any question, it'll give me any answer. And this is true and false at the same time. And what do I mean by that? If you think about digital twins, which are a synthetic methodology, they use historical data to extend and answer questions that you didn't ask before, right? But the caveat is that you need to ask questions that are relevant. So things that the data set will know. The same category, topics, behaviors. It would be like asking a football coach who knows all about sports and about its players if someone is going to be good at painting. I don't know. Yeah. Because, I don't have that knowledge. I don't have that experience and understanding of my players. It's the same with data. You need to provide relevancy. AI will always answer. But again, can you trust that answer? And can you use that answer to make a decision?
And I can imagine that being transparent as well, like just showing that, look, this is done by this way, and we need to be transparent about the results and whatnot, right?
Exactly. The transparency. And I think, as I said, this is a new technology. So there is a difference between experimentation and what you use now in the real world, I would say. Yeah. So I think for experimentation, we need to keep throwing data, adapting, because that's how we will learn. But what about how you use it? And I think that is a key difference today, and as things are moving fast, how do you split that experimentation versus everyday use? That's an important question for everyone. The other myth, I'm gonna last one and then some others that I've been hearing broadly. Yeah. The other myth is about the fact that switching to synthetic is easy. And I think it could be, but I think it depends as well on what you mean by switching. Do you want to, again, test, experiment, or do you want to apply it at scale on all your programs? Yep. And that is a massive difference. And for me, when we talk about systematically adapting synthetic on research programs, that is where the tricky bit comes in. Because it is not just about wanting it, it is about ensuring, again, that it consistently delivers accurate results for all the metrics that our clients are going to be using. And not all synthetic is made equal. That we know with a lot of the tests that we've done with Kantar and third-party suppliers. Is modeling of data. And at the end of the day, different models behave different on different data sets. So I think you need to plan for it. You need the technology to adapt at scale, and so on and so forth. APIs, how are you going to adapt it in the business, and so on. And, some of the other myths that I've been hearing, I'm not going to go into detail into those, but I've been hearing there's minimum thresholds to boost. You can boost data if you think about generating neurons as much as you please. All synthetic data is created equal. We feel that it's just this sort of magic wand that appears data that is accurate and reflects humans. Well, again, that's not the case yet, right? Yeah. We may get there, but we need to check what we're generating. Is data generating data?
It's kind of like in the early 2000s, and I mean, this is like technology. When there's a new technology, this always happens, right? Like in the early 2000s, it
Exactly.
was like the dot-com boom where everyone was like, this is the best new thing and you need to be on board, and then it shifted to something else. So is this kind of the same situation?
Look, I believe that this technology will stick. That's my personal view. Because it has worked in other industries, right? If you think about financial services, even though, in financial services, the use of synthetic data for privacy, it's slightly different because it's less complex. We underestimate the complexity of the data sets that we use for market research, where, you have if A, then B, and C, and we ask many people many questions. Data sets used in other industries are less complex and therefore easier to manage. And then again, that we've learned with a lot of the experimentation we've done. But I think, if you think about use cases like aviation, energy, digital twinning has worked really effectively to improve processes, expand experimentation. And this has been happening for, more than, I think it's around 40 years or so, right? So since the late 80s. So I believe it will stick. I believe it's just more about the maturity that we will need to achieve.
And how are the clients responding to this? I know that some people are still skeptical, some people are still curious. How do you see from your experience, how are the clients?
Yeah, I love this question because, it's all of the above. It's like when you're just like, yes, I want it. Oh, I'm scared. What do I do? So I observe, within the same client, all of the emotions you can have. As you mentioned, right? It's like any new technology. So if you think about Alexa, you think, well, what is this thing? Do I talk to a machine? Do I name it? Is it listening to me? So I think it's this technology adoption curve that it usually, you start with the innovators and then you have a flow of followers, of laggards that follow that, will continue the trend. So what I'm seeing is that, we have a lot of innovators in the industry who are asking the questions, who are experimenting, trying to understand the implementation for their companies. And so I observe all of the emotions. Now, in that context, I think what I see specifically is that there's this excitement, right? I want to implement it, but there's a need for them to showcase to their business that this is going to work. So that's where I feel they are a bit more conservative or want to do, again, test. And then at the same time, what I'm hearing as well is that our clients or, brands want a plan that is not just for today, but for the future, because this has implications on ongoing programs. And if you think about brand performance, you need consistency in outputs. So it is excitement, I need evidence to make a decision, and I need a plan for the future. So I know if this methodology is going to stick, is worth changing. As you said, is this going to stick? Well, we need to know what that means for our program. That is what I'm observing with our clients.
I have kind of a provoking question that I was thinking about. Do you think that sometimes people are oversimplifying these technologies in the sense of everyone kind of knows how to use ChatGPT, for example, or the Google ones, or like the chatbots? I feel like people. We reach to a point where kind of people kind of understand how they work. Like you ask for something, give something back. Sometimes it hallucinates, sometimes it doesn't. But I have, at least from my experience, like I have some people around me that use it a lot for, just to ask, like, what time is the sunset? Some stuff like that. But then there's the skepticals, of course. But I was thinking about the curious, like if it's so easy for them to understand ChatGPT or like the way that they use chatbots. And then when they think about synthetic data, they just think like it's kind of like the same thing. So it should just be easy. We can just integrate this, and then it leads to some errors, and it needs more preparation and more planning. Is that something that you've been seeing?
Yeah, 100%. I think, as you said, there's people who's over enthusiastic and then you use it for everything, which I heard that has impact on the environment, which we don't even think about, how you consume so much by asking a simple question. But anyway, that's a different topic. But look, I feel I'm really pro innovation and experimentation. And so I feel you need this kind of people, because that's a technology change. You need this kind of tests. Like, for example, even at Kantar, all of us at Kantar have Copilot for the organization. So that experimentation is what is going to help us to democratize access and use and not be scared of asking questions. I think what we need to consider, though, is, again, asking the right questions. I mentioned earlier on, there's a difference between experimentation and then what you use business as usual.
Yeah.
And I think this is where companies need to really think about. And for example, at Kantar, we have that, right? Again, in our use of Copilot, we have the day-to-day experimentation, but then you have the use cases that need scaling.
Yeah.
That's the other element. Experimentation doesn't necessarily mean scale and applicability for any technology. And I think when I talk about scale in the context of market research, scale for me accounts for accuracy as well, repeatability, verification, tech verification, and not necessarily 100% human intervention, little human intervention. So again, I think there's a difference that the industry is not necessarily considering, which is what is experimentation, what is scaling of some of these technologies.
Perfect. I have one last question.
Mm-hmm.
How do you see this evolving in the next 5 years?
I am really excited about this space because I feel if you start combining synthetic with Gen AI, the power of, video content or image generation, again, with Gen AI, I think, I can imagine that it's going to be a place when it comes to market research where creativity will mix a lot more with data.
Okay.
And for me, that is a powerful combination because I think historically that was a bit of a divide where you either had data or creativity in the context of marketing and brands. And so that really excites me. It excites me the fact that we will be able to understand people faster, I believe, in a couple of years, better. If you think about underrepresented audiences, not only for the main brands, but for any big questions that we have, in the world about what's happening, what do people care about, and so on. So I feel that will let us understand more audiences. You have digital data proliferation as well, which, I've really, I've worked on for a few years. And again, the power to understand human behavior at scale is amazing. So I think when you start combining all of these, you can really look at behaviors and predict behaviors that will hopefully help us focus on brands, but also on what we want as world citizens and consumer citizens, or however you want to call it. And I think, in that context, this is where Kantar is really focusing on ensuring that we reimagine how we understand people and how we as well focus on having connectivity in our data sets, that we have precision in what we're working on. Again, that scalability, repeatability, is brand guidance with precision, understanding more people, leveraging granular human responses, and it's about blended connected intelligence, access through Gen AI. I talked about, and you talked about, you have people experimenting. Well, how do you democratize insights and that data plus a creativity element? So, said a lot, but I think it is a really exciting space.
It is.
Yeah.
It is, for sure. It's a great space. It's very inspiring, and it's very inspiring to see these types of reports and what, for example, Kantar is doing in surrounding this team.
I think, we are taking it really seriously because, again, it's the scalability element, accuracy, repeatability. I think as well, and I don't know, you ask about myths, and one of the things that I hear again and again, there's a bit of confusion sometimes between predictive analytics and synthetic data. Like a lot. And that is when, synthetic data is obviously used to generate new data, and predictive analytics is when you have a data set and you predict an outcome. So that's important as well for our listeners to be aware of. Maybe, should have mentioned that before. But for me, it's not about the technology that you're using. It's about why you're using it. What is the answer? And that's going beyond the hype as well. Don't get caught up on, is it synthetic? Is it predictive analytics? What is it that you're trying to solve for your organization? And then how do you go about it? Where do you have data that you can maximize, capitalize on, versus where do you need to generate new data?
Yeah, because at the end, it's not a one solution fits all. It's not like the problem that I have or that I could have in my brands could not be the same thing that you have on yours. And the same solution doesn't fit for both problems. That's very interesting.
Exactly. And access to data as well, right? So, the reason why some companies may generate synthetic is because they don't have the data. If you think about Kantar, for example, where we have massive, millions of data points on concept evaluation or advertising evaluation, we use predictive analytics to predict a response to either a creative or a concept. That is not synthetic. Some of our clients think it is. It is predictive analytics. Again, it's more about what is it that you want to achieve rather than what is the methodology behind.
Absolutely. Well, that's very interesting. It was a great food for thought episodes that we just had. Thank you so much, Cynthia, for your time and for your refreshing and your explanations. As I said in the beginning, I think it's always very important to have different perspectives when it comes to new technology, new ideas and new ways to see and what people are doing in different ways. Because again, like it's not a one solution fits all, and it's always important to find ways to use the technology in ways that fit your problems or fit your brand or fit your research or everything else. So thank you so much, Cynthia, for your time. Thank you so much for your article and for your reports. I will link it all in the show notes. And thank you so much. And I'll see you on the next one.
No worries. Thank you, Antonio.
All right.